We are live-ish.
Well, we're not live.
Not actually live.
we are recording. This is not live and possibly local.
Imagine if we did it live.
Oh no, it would be terrible. Well,
It'd be a clusterfuck.
one Tate's internet would just shit a brick. Like physically, like he'd go live and like you could watch his like phone line like bulge up like a balloon, and then like it travels along the line. All right, welcome everybody to the Outside Line episode. Tate, put that in post. With special guest this time, the Dejega Good Vibes Award winner from last round, Mr. Tim Greaves. How you doing, Tim?
Yeah, not bad.
That's good. That's good. And then, of course, my name is Ben Snell, and alongside me today we have Jackson Snell and Mr. Tate Lindstrom. How you two fellas doing? Don't
Getting
everybody
goals.
speak at once.
I'm hugging the heater again still. It's bloody cold out here, but I still haven't fixed the globe in this room, so it's got my little lamp. Not too bad.
Very good. How you doing, Jack?
Yeah, good. Also freezing. My lights work though, so it's all right.
And you got LZ on in the background there.
Yeah, I'm gonna change.
I thought that was Cam Martin.
Yeah, it's Cam Martin.
That's it. All right, so this is our traditional. Obviously, we never actually figure out when we're putting these out, but we normally do one before-ish round and one after-ish round. And this is our after-ish round, 3-ish round podcast episode number, whatever number it is. So yeah, we have obviously round 3. We're going to go through the stuff from round 3, all that fun stuff, and then have a chat with Tim about Tim stuff afterwards. So we'll get straight into our results. There we go. I really can't talk. Straight into L1. Of course, Mr. Man on a mission right now is Dale Campaign. I think that's 3 from 3 this season.
Yeah, so he's taken out another one. He was very, very close to not even getting into the top 8. If you look at the points, there was 4 people separated by 0.5 of a point going into the top 8. So, yeah, he only just scraped into the top 8, but ended up taking out the event anyway.
So he actually only just scraped into the top 16 from memory as well. I mean, I'm on driftingsa.com.au live because there is like points and stuff. So L1 round 2. So when we went into the top 16, Dale was 14th. So 14th out of the 16 people with a 99.5 points. He was only 3 points clear of Adam Wood, who was our bottom, tied with Adam May for getting into the top 16. So this actually, I'm going to divert this conversation straight away into something that we had for later on in the thing. The point system, how tight all these points are, and the fact that everyone... Like, you look at a typical run and you're seeing most of the time, unless someone spins, they're above a 20, which means like 20 out of 30. So it means they're getting an average score of 7 or higher for just completing a lap. Is it too lenient, or like it's too grouped together?
Should we be grading worth of talking on this one?
Should we be grading on a curve more? Is what I'm saying. Like, should a spin and then continuing on be like 2 points and not 5 points or something like that? Like, because obviously these points are super close and everyone's super tight, and you've got people like missing out on the top 8 by literally tying on points and going back to the best run or however they split it. Like, it's something that obviously needs to be looked at a little bit. Obviously, moving on.
Yeah, but I think Dale probably had some runs. He took a little while to warm up, though. So he sort of... I don't think he had necessarily amazing runs at the start, but we also know with the scoring system, if you get someone that's good as your partner in the battle, you have a tendency to get good points. If you get someone that's not as good, your points have a tendency to be a bit more average. So I'm not sure if that was also a factor of it. But yeah, he took a little while to warm up. Came good in the end, but only just managed to get through.
It is interesting. Like you look at the round 1 and 2, the 32 round robin battles. For Dale's scores, he scored 22-ish for 3 out of those 4 runs. So he had one run that was
Good.
really, really up there, and the rest were all simply consistent. And that's something that I mean, having driven with Dale over the last 10 years or so, Dale is just super consistent. It's something he's always been, is really consistent. You can't fault that about him. The problem is that consistency can actually be a burden in this type of point scoring, because it almost looks like you're playing it safe. You may not be, you're just driving consistently, but consistently it's at 80 to 85% isn't going to get the top 16 at the moment, because everyone else is aiming for that 100, 110%. And a handful of people will get it, and a handful of people will get really close and get rewarded for trying that hard. It's where there's that separation there.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Jack?
Yeah, very similar thoughts to what me and you have always sort of thought. And even when I was judging, it was one of those things. There was always those people that are mid-pack, but now there's so many people that are, I wouldn't even say mid-pack. There's so many good drivers that it really needs to be something to determine the better drivers. And there's, Stewie's always said about using half points here or a quarter of a point there. But once again, it was like an automatic thing. If someone would spin, they get a 2 for completing the lap, But whether they change it to out of 100 or start using those sort of decimal points a lot more, but very similar thing. Like I missed out on top 8 by 1 3/4 points or something like that, and ended up 11th. And it's so there's 3 other people in front of me still that missed out on 1.5 points, missed out by 1 point. It is obviously super duper close, and there is a lot of consistently, good drivers in SA at the moment. So I think something has to be changed a little bit. Nothing's really been changed in any of the systems since this way of our events has been run. Whether that's something that Stewie you can look at changing the qualifying essentially, or making top 16 just elimination.
Yeah, I think it's not. There's nothing wrong with the system. And Stu, I've already spoken to Stewie about this. He's been very regular. If you go from 10 to 100, all it does is it just makes an arbitrary score, and you'll see a lot of people just being given 80s and 90s and stuff like that. It's
correct. Yeah,
it's not so much the spacing. I think the judging needs to be harsher. I think doing a lap where you do a lap and finish and don't do anything outstanding, but you don't make any mistakes, should be a 5 from each judge instead of a 7. And having that baseline be moved from a low 20 back to a mid-teen will then allow that spread in that top half to be a lot more noticeable. And where someone has an actual okay, a better than average lap, they're going to get a 20 to a 25. And then instead of going, I've only got a point or 2 more than a normal lap, I've actually got 5 or 6 more than a normal lap. It actually allows that separation, and you can actually see maybe a little bit more diversity in the points. Because at the moment, it's pretty much you got an under a 10 or a low 20. There's very, very rarely you'll see something in that mid-teens range.
Yeah. So here's one of the hard things that I think with the point system, and because everyone's driving so well, it makes it very difficult. But if you have a look, I came 14th overall. Over 6 runs, I got 144.5. And to get in, you needed 151. So there's probably, 6-7 points there, something like that, over 6 runs. I don't know if you can really tell on a run the difference between, say, a 24 and a 25. If somebody sat you down, I think it would be really difficult to tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And certainly that is enough judging error that it starts to become something that you can't really quantify anymore. And when things become hard to quantify, people don't know what's going on, and you don't actually know why people are getting more points than the others. And that's sort of when the whole thing goes out the window. Because of those issues, because everything's so close, you can't tell anymore what a better run is when everything's so close. So I don't really know 100% how you fix that, because a lot of it is just drivers being really close. But I do think that it needs to be clearer who wins and who doesn't win. And when you've got 4 people there separated by 0.5 of a point, and that is sitting right in the middle of getting into top 8 or not, then if you miss out on top 8 by 0.5 over 6 runs, you don't know where that 0.5 was. Like,
yeah, exactly.
So the hard thing to me is I like the judging system like that. The problem is things are so close. I think maybe a top 16 elimination would be better because
it took the words out of my mouth. That was literally what I was going to say next. Is you might have to bump it back a layer and go to that top 16 elimination. You're still going to get that ambiguity where people are going to say, "Well, I missed out on the top 16 by a handful of points." But it means there is a bit more pressure for people to really try to excel in that top 16, not try to coast at the end there because they've banked 2 really good top 32 runs and go, well, if I flub my top 16, I've actually got a really good one that's already going to double and get me into the 8.
Yeah.
It enforces that top 16 battle is a battle.
Yeah, for sure.
Which might help. It might.
Yeah. And I kind of think. Oh, sorry. Go, Tate.
I think if you didn't make it into the top 16, let's be honest, you weren't going to make it into the top 8. I don't think you're going to pull that out. The scoring isn't going to be that far off, even if it's tight. So I don't think that's too much of a concern. If you were 17th or 18th, reality is you weren't going to be 6th or 8th.
Look, there's a handful of us that have gone from 16th. I've done it one of the rounds and got to like 9th or just scraped into the 8th by doing a really, really stellar top 16 run. Dale's a really good example of the last round. He managed to go from 14th and pull himself back into that 8 just. But you're right in saying that most people, they've already got themselves further down that order. They're not going to be able to pull something miraculous in one extra battle to get them up into that 8.
And I think it's so much. It's a lot clearer. It's a lot easier to say to people, this person that you battled against and that the judges saw at the same time was better than you, than it is being able to say all these battles that you didn't see and weren't a part of were slightly better than you. It's like one comparing against one data point compared to a whole bunch is going to be a lot easier for people to understand. One factor that you could think might be an issue on an event like this would be the amount of time taken. I think if you did top 16, you'd end up just doing 2 battles in the way that we do them now, and then you'd have 16 elimination. So you should still have the same number of battles to get to that top 8. But one more times would probably be an issue because we have a tendency to have quite a few one more times.
And I think that comes down to what you've said about the judging being potentially a little harsher, a little bit more, decisive and saying, yes, there is certainly situations, don't get me wrong, there's absolutely situations even in a top 32 in certain competitions where...
It doesn't matter which run you watch. If there's which bracket it's in, you watch 2 people door each other and have a perfect lead run. Of course, it's going to be a rerun, like something like that. But but when you watch 2 people have a perfect lead run, they both door each other. One person has like a wobble like this that's noticeable. That should be enough to lose. It shouldn't be it was pretty close. We'll go again. No, that was a decisive difference.
It almost becomes a wind back there where they start trying to find a justification from the other person to go, but the other person kind of straightened from over there. We'll rerun them. And you go, no. If you don't recall exactly what they did wrong, and that one you can definitely go, they had a flub in their chase or their lead, you make that call based on the error that you can remember.
So I did have some thoughts on the time schedule if you were to do it this way, in that if you didn't have enough time for one more times, because we know that we probably would get quite a few of them, and sometimes they can go for 2 or 3 extra battles. You could have a system that says if it goes to one more time, then the person that had the higher points gets through. Now, some people mightn't like that, but it does give more weighting to those first 2 battles if you were to do it that way, to go out and go hard so that you're in the top 8, so that if you do come to a one more time situation, you get through. So I don't know. There's a few options there.
There was definitely talk amongst the drivers after the last event that I saw about there's a handful that wouldn't mind going back to some sort of calculated qualifying, even though we've sort of moved away from a pre-qualification to the battle rounds. You could certainly use that as a count back tool for top 16 reruns. Go, this person qualified higher, but that adds significant time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's going to be interesting too, because obviously next round at Malala, we're going back to a super round, so we're actually going to bring back qualifying, which to me kind of seems redundant now because we're so used to doing this knockout quali, or not knockout quali, but like the battle qualies, that now basically we've got qualifying 2, and then qualifying 3 in the top 16. So it's just like how much qualifying do you need to do to justify your top 8?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that qualifying these days is like the single qualifying on super rounds is in reality just for shootout. I mean, it's a big chunk of time devoted to qualifying for something that is essentially another qualifying.
When you've got a full 2-day event, like it doesn't matter so much because there's obviously so much track time that you can justify spending an hour and a half, 2 hours rolling out single cars. Like it's not that big of a deal because no one's going to be out there for 10 hours on Saturday just practicing and tandeming and stuff like that. Even look at a Matsuri, by the end of the day, the numbers wash out and people not get over driving, but run out of tires, run out of motivation. But there's going to be people wanting to save their cars. Like we've looked at so many people that have backed out of team drift because they're too worried about damage on the cars on a Saturday night and stuff like that. So it is just one of those things. Like on a 2-day event, I don't mind the single car qualifying as much. Like obviously you can't fit it into one of the single day rounds that we're doing, but like it seems so redundant now that like we qualify to then set the bracket to qualify again. So
yeah, I mean it works certainly for the shootout and for the bonus points you get from that for like a championship. Again, you add those to your team drift scores. That all goes towards championship and the round overall, but it only applies at a super round, and yeah, there just isn't the time for it in the single days. And whether that becomes even a thing in itself, that's the other justification of maybe changing how that top 16 looks in terms of being knockout versus points to try to maybe concise some of that further.
Just looking at the points, though, it actually looks like the 9 to 16 bracket is actually tighter than the 8 to 1st bracket.
Yeah, well, you've got that big anomaly too with Bogger and Ferrin at the top because they turned it on when it wasn't a knockout battle, and then sorry, as soon as it went to a knockout bracket battle, they had to deal with Dale, the underdog, who just snuck into the top 8, but obviously battled Bogger and then battled Ferrin because they were 1 and 2. So but like yeah, you take away those two, you go from 159 to 151 from 3rd to 8th, which is that typical grouping that we're expecting, which is about that 10 points. And then you had another 10 points clear to Ferrin at 170, another 5 to Bogger. So it's nuts. But then you look at that 9 to 16, and it's about that. Well, if you take 16th away and go back to Hayden and 15th, it's only a 9-point spread as well. So it's so tight. Like the scores are so tight, and they don't spread out. Like the spread in the top 16, like from 2 runs, is again it's actually a more bigger spread in the top 16 than it was in the top 8. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I got it right. Anyway, points.
Points, maths, Excel
Points.
documents.
That's it. Stewie just loves numbers. I swear.
Yeah. So I don't know. To me, top 16 elimination makes sense. And I think there's ways that you can make it work. It'd make it a bit clearer for everyone. You will have a bit more randomness, I'm sure, because people randomly spin out, and rather than being able to be saved by the point system, they would just be out. But I guess that's a part of the game you play.
Yeah,
That
and
little
like
bit of
Stewie does go on about, the top drivers usually make it to the top 8 and on in this system, but like at the same time, like throwing sick laps all day is one thing, but then having to know that this is my shot, like this is my only chance, I can't make the mistake, is a totally different style of pressure, and it's a totally different driving well standard to have. Like, look at Dale.
Yeah.
Dale just went, stuff it and cruise through. The points rounds basically did the bare minimum to get himself through. But as soon as it went to an elimination battle, he's just switched like that and turned it on. So we know that Dale's really good at that, and that's why he's basically one of the best in the country. So that's that,
I mean, I
it's
think
that mindset
that
thing.
That shows itself though in the fact that the two interstate guys that pushed right to the top of the list at the end of the first two rounds, because they arrive and they drive like they're battling for win and lose.
Yeah.
And so they're throwing it all on the line from the get-go, whether it's almost a level of, I'm trying to think of the way I want to word it nicely, but like there's almost a level of security that has been almost cultured into the SA guys now because we have that battle round system, that maybe they're not pushing as hard as they can in those first two battles.
And I think that shows with how close the midfield is now, that everyone's just going, I just got to make it through, not make any major mistakes, and I should be there or thereabouts. But the problem is there or thereabouts goes from 3rd to 19th.
Yeah, and it's absolutely, it almost looks black and white when you look at the fact that the two interstate guys just shot to the top of that list.
Come out
the top
swinging,
32 battles. And the rest of them, as you say, were within Barclays of each other, like so close. So, and maybe that's something that from a judge's brief they need to push harder in the morning and say, guys, if you're all going to coast, you're all going to be questioning why did this person get through versus that person at the end. You got to show us early on and refer it back to the round just gone. Say, you saw what Farron did, you saw what Bogger did. You got to push. If you don't push that hard first thing and you all coast, you're all going to be complaining at the end going, I don't understand why this person got ahead of me by half a point or whatever else. If you stamp it and you absolutely, seal that envelope, send it out, there is no questioning it then. You put 110% into it from the get-go, and it shows in the results.
I don't think anyone's thinking too much about, I'm going to be not going at it 100%, but yeah, I think it plays in the back of people's brains a bit because they know if you make a mistake and then someone in front of you has a bad lead that you're struggling to chase and they're all over the place, that's your day done. So I think people are very wary, although they've got a drop round, they're very wary that it doesn't take much to fall off that curve. And once you fall off that curve, you've got no hope of getting through.
Interesting. Very good. Oh, sorry, my throat's a little bit. How you going? So, after all that massive diversion, which we all knew was coming, didn't we?
Thanks, Ben.
That's all right. We had Mr. Monkhouse finish second, which is great to see. Tommy's back on form. I ran into him in the pits right after the finals. We knew the results, but hadn't done the results yet. But he knew he'd come second, and he goes, "It's great." He goes, "I would have wanted to beat Dale, obviously, because he's on form, and every time we lose to him, he gets further away." But he goes, "I had a pretty average round, round 2, and after I think he comes second round 1 as well." So he goes, "I was actually pretty down myself, and wasn't super thrilled about bombing out early." So he goes, "I'm really happy to be back up here and right up to the top again." And I'm just loving watching Tom drive lately. It's the Tom Monkhouse of old. Just throws it in, super hard, super committed, and it's great to watch. And of course, his car sounds really good too, which helps.
Yeah, that Steffi's seen a few things, I think. But awesome to have Tom back out there. He's been killing it, really. He's come out. I don't think he did that much driving until recently, and he's come back out in that Steffi and pretty much been killing it the whole time. So
yeah, the last 2 years or so, he's really been picking up form, and he's right on top of that wave right now. So it's really good to see. And then speaking of the Victorians from earlier, Ferrin finally makes it on the podium after claiming he was going to be on it from the get go. He's finally made it there.
Yeah, he's about 3 rounds too late from his predictions, but all right, we'll give him something.
No, he did really well. So it was just unfortunate for him to come against Dale in the top 4. Really, it was pretty much the deciding factor when it comes to that. Like, yeah, we were all going, after the qualifying battles in the top 16, we're like, all right, we're going to see a Victorian on the podium, if not the top step today. And if I was a betting man, I would have put money on Bogger to push through, because he was just driving like a man possessed. And just unfortunate, just got a little bit too keen behind Dale coming into that hairpin and spun it around, which, it's just one of those things that happens. You can spend all day driving like a man possessed, and when it comes to a point where if you spin it matters and you spin, that's your day over.
Yeah, well, I drove against Ferrin in the top 16, and he was all over me. He hit me on, or tapped me on transition, left a nice little wheel mark on my rear bumper, and he was all over me. He did a really good lead run too, so I think he was hungry, and it pretty much showed through all his driving.
Cool bananas. So, any other people of note from L2, from L1? I'm going to put my hand straight out and say Roger coming back after breaking his car at round 1, missing round 2, comes back almost like this close to being on the podium. Got himself P4, and it's great to see him back and straight back into form. And he's always done pretty well around Malala, so hopefully fingers crossed for him. Although I keep putting the mockers on him. I want to see Roger on the podium. Yeah,
there was a couple of people I thought might be worth mentioning. Stevie Griffin in the little MX-5 supercharged. He ended up 5th, which is pretty damn impressive considering that car doesn't have a lot of power and he hasn't driven it a whole lot. No. So he's got to be pretty stoked. He was right out on the wall. When I did watch the replays, you could see he was right out on the wall and killing it. So that thing's only making half its boost. So he's got to fix up a few things on that, and it's going to make even more power. It's going to be a pretty cool little weapon to watch.
Yeah, for sure. It's great to see Stevie back out there with the Uber pumper going now. So and it made such a difference. Like, that's all he needed was that extra 30, 40 kilowatts just to get him over that hump of I'm just not quite there, to going, oh no, I can make it through corners now and actually, put up a fight and I can actually concentrate on my line and chasing and doing that rather than going, I just need to get through the track. So it's great to see him get that little bit of an extra edge and straight away being on form as well. So that was good to see.
Yeah, and the other person too, another low-powered hero, Jared in little K-Sev, come out swinging with a 29 in the first round. So he ended up 12th, but after the first 2 rounds, I think he was still in the top 8. So,
Jared's good.
Quite,
He's so good to drive, like good to watch drive and to drive with the little beams powered K70. So it's good. It's that car is really, really clean as well. I believe that's an old J Duca shell. But yeah, it's really cool. The thing's super light. Like, everything on it is like perspex and fiberglass and all that stuff. I think I'd like to know what it weighs, but like it would be very, very light.
Probably the other one that I think I'd have to bring into that as well. Same sort of thing, and it's low power again, but you can't go past Dan Hollins in terms of his return to competing. And when you look at the scores, you realise that both his lead runs were 24 and a halves. Now, he didn't make it into the 16 because his chase runs without the power in that 350, he really struggled to try to keep with people. But his lead runs were so clean. They were absolutely what we're asking of him. And to see him having not competed in, 6 years or something like that, come out and have lead runs that were effectively higher than most of Dale's points for the first 2 battle runs. It was just his chases that he just couldn't keep up. So yeah, if we can get him over the next hump with that car, and whether it's nitrous or a little spoolie boy or something, yeah, I reckon if he could chase as well as he could lead, he'll surprise some people with that thing.
I don't even think it was a case of not being able to keep up. I think it was his car gripping up in the bowl, because he was entering slower behind people that had more power that could just like float in and then just like gas it through, whereas he was like full speed, full mat on his leads, and having to feather the car in the run up in the chases really hurt him, and that's what he was saying. But
it choked it out and made it almost impossible to hold it at angle because it was too slow. Yeah.
I think from memory, the last time he's competed was when that infamous helmet throw came out, wasn't it, down at Mount Gambier?
I don't even know that he managed to compete that weekend. He tried.
I think he tried. Yeah, he tried to compete. We'll put it
that was 2016, and then I think the time before that would have been DCA at with the convertible with the RX-7
V8.
Yeah,
so that's 6 or 7 years.
So that DCA 2016 definitely rode off a few cars.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah. All right.
First go at the pinball machine, that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, I like this. I'm going to buy a car, and then rode off a car every year, 3 years in a row after that. So, really kept true to form on that one. All right. So, speaking of writing off cars, let's go on to L2. Actually, I don't think anyone really had a major incident on the weekend. Apart from Kurt. Kurt put the nose into the wall pretty early on. That
was a weird one.
Yeah,
that must be weird 31 things. I watched that
weird,
and
weird 31 things, and Kurt really loves using the foot brake to adjust the car, and that was a case of, I'm pretty sure he's got semis on the front, wet, damp, patchy conditions, and I think he's gone to just use the foot brake to settle the car, and it's just pinched the fronts and go pop, and just set the front straight into the wall. So really unfortunate there for Kurt, but he got it back together and got out and did some laps. And does someone need to go to Jack's house and give him the home
Yeah,
look?
Jack's trying to go quietly.
But yeah, I was only making that reference because the other Noisy Boy G-powered or VQ-powered car, Mr. Simeon, made it into the top 4, I think, which again is a great achievement for John. But yeah, the side of his car is a pancake for John reasons.
From a previous bowl incident.
I was going to say, wasn't that at Taylor and Ben 2 years ago or something?
Yeah, pretty much. I think he gave up on trying to fix it. He's like, I'm going to keep hitting stuff, and so may as well just keep going. So, which is my attitude as well. So, but yeah. So L2, Mr. Simeon got into the top 4. Just missed out on a podium ever so much. He lost in the top 4 to our eventual winner, which was another John, which is Jonathan Ben. So he's been looking getting ever so close to punching into that podium territory, Mr. Benz, and I think it's his first top 4 from memory, and he's gone straight through and straight to the top. So big congratulations to Jonathan. He did a cracker job all weekend, and it was a great battle between himself and Harry Whitehead in the final there. And that's those 2 cars that everyone's been going, oh, they're not really level 2 cars, when we had that conversation last weekend about power versus driver mod. And Harry in second, and Mr. Patrick with the R31 with the oil cooler hanging out the front backed up his win from last round and finished on the podium once again. So the L2 track was a big topic of debate coming into this round, and obviously some revisions were made, and we ended up initiating, basically halfway through the quad kink was the go, and it really changed the dynamic of that level 2 layout. Yeah, bit of a different layout. I think some of the guys might have preferred to do the wall layout, but when Stewie sort of mentioned or replied to that, it's pretty clear that he wants to keep L2 nice and friendly to newbies coming in and having to run or even be
close to a wall that follows you around a corner probably isn't going to be the best for those kind of guys. So I think the reality is if you're happy to run that wall and you've got a car to do it, then you should really go up to L1. To me, if you want to run the L1 layout, then run L1. Don't be in L2.
Yeah.
Better off to put yourself up and run the layout that you want to run, and you'll learn more doing that than hanging around in L2 anyway. So, yeah, I don't know. The layout was a little bit interesting. I've done that sort of quad kink that direction before with Drift Masters, but we did it with plenty of speed coming into it. So I found it was fine and it flowed pretty good, but I think you need to be in third gear drifting when you go into the quad kink, not trying to go from second to third, because I don't think that would work.
Yeah, I mean, I went back and watched a little bit. I drove Drift Masters obviously with you, Tate, when we did that at the end of our layout. But as you say, we did that through a finishing point, flat out third gear. Watching some of the live stream back that I didn't get to see on the day of those guys, it did look like it was actually more techie and difficult for them to initiate mid quad kink and then get out to that outside zone than the guys coming off the wall. That they were already carrying pace,
So much speed,
and the inertia was taking them out there anyway. The guys actually had to work a lot harder, I think, probably in L2 to get to that outer area. It was definitely a techie layout. I don't envy them. It's sort of, yes, it's safe away from the wall, but it's tricky. It takes a bit of, you got to have a think about how you're going to do it.
Yeah. So I got here. The event actually ran pretty smoothly, though. I was kind of disappointed because I put my car on the trailer thinking that we're running behind and would only have like 2.5 minutes of best and the rest, and we seemed to get a full session in. So I was a bit disappointed about that, but obviously the event must have been running pretty well on time, which is a nice one.
Yeah, we can thank Franco for that up in race control, really pumping those cars out. Definitely caught myself and Danny off guard a few times where we're still waffling on about the last battle or something that happened just before, and then you go, oh crap, there's a car in the bowl. Who's there? Shit. And then you have to like onto that. And obviously when Stewie put up that post about on average we ended up running a battle every 90 seconds, there was obviously a few people that going, whoa, did the judges have time to calculate scores and yada yada, which also led into that whole point system debate as well. So if you want to look at that, it's somewhere on Facebook, and go
Thanks,
have fun.
Ben.
It might have been on the drivers committee page. I can't remember, but either way,
it's probably not anywhere that the random people can see it.
It's not probably for the general public.
It is still one of those. It can be a bragging point, but it doesn't have to be. But it is one of those points that people that come from interstate, they always say it to me. I know Marcus Gilligan, the guy from Tasmania, he said to me after the last round, he said, I can't believe how fast you guys power through stuff.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. He said, you guys just get so many battles in, so much track time. You're not sitting around as a driver going, what am I doing until my next battle in an hour and a half? You got to be back there because they're going to keep pushing you through, and you get more battles, more stuff to do. And he loved it, coming from the Tasmania drift scene, which he said was, by comparison, he said there's a lot of clickiness and a lot of downtime and a lot of big power cars, and then a lot of really low cars. There's no meshing. There's no in between. Whereas what we've set up here, he couldn't rate it high enough in terms of the sort of intermediate nature of everyone, because we've leveled the playing field with tyre rules and with the judging style, and it's just the speed that we go through. He said you didn't feel like you were waiting for anything. It is good, but as you say, there's that trade-off where people go, well, are the judges getting enough time?
Well, the other thing with that as well, especially when you get to like top 16, the fact that, because we stagger all of our runs as well, so we don't run driver A and B, lead and chase, and then flip them around. We run A, B, then C, D, and then B, A, and then D, C. So that staggering of, while cars are transiting around, it's not even that too. It's usually A, B, C, D, E, F. We run 4 battles around and then come back to the other guys. But when you can have cars transiting while you have cars battling, it's always going to speed up the process to go faster and faster and faster. And that's one thing when you go back to, if you do go to an elimination top 16, is when you start going A, B, C, D, B, A, D, C, you have to start going, hang on a minute, I've got to separate a run out from there and then pull it over here with these guys. And it does make the judge's life a little bit harder. I know when you used to judge G1, it seemed a little bit like that sometimes because we did, again, Malar, it's the thing, Malar's such a long transit time. Transit time's like twice the length of the actual run itself, so you had to run multiple battles at the same time, otherwise you would literally not get a top 16 done in a day.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, it's one of those things as well. You have to keep in mind.
I know that I watched and sort of, I don't know, took a look over all of the scores and compared them to the live stream and what I thought the scores would be. And I know that I couldn't make a decision quite often. I would watch a run and then have to go back and pause it so I could put my score in and have a think about it. So there's that side of it too, which you guys have sort of alluded to, that it is very quick. If I had to make decisions that quick, like if I was making those decisions without pausing the video, I don't know if I could have made decisions that I felt super comfortable with that quickly, because it's just...
And that is a good thing. That is a massive credit to the judges as well for the fact that they did get it done. Like, even if they maybe would have felt rushed, they've still got it done. They've put scores in at least. They haven't gone, oh, shit, what was old mate down there? What was, I don't know. Like, it was all flowing well. There was never... I never looked across from the commentary box over to the judges' booth and saw confusion. Like, I always saw just intent. Like, I watched people watching what was going on. I never looked across, like, straight after a battle and saw people going, oh, what was going on, rah, rah. Like, it was always, they were looking forwards or they were looking down. Like, they were very, very on the job, and a massive shout out to those guys for it's the hardest job in drifting. It's the most thankless job in drifting. Like, stuff that. Like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely one of the... I'd hate to be making those judging calls some of those times when you look at it and you're going, oh, I got to send pretty much someone home at the moment. I don't know who I'm going to pick, or was that a hit or wasn't it a hit? Was he pushed? Yeah.
Or was that a 5 or was that a 6 or was that a 5.5 or was that a 6.25?
Yeah.
So what did we reckon of the L1 layout? Obviously a new layout that we hadn't run before. Sort of a different direction on the bowl that I don't think we've ever run that direction.
I don't think we've ever run from the bowl and then into the infield like we did on that round. So I'll leave that all to you guys because I didn't get to drive that because my car's still broken.
You missed out, is what I'll say. You missed out.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
It's a layout that I hope they do again. It's a lot of fun. It's sort of, for me at least, it combines two completely different styles of drifting in the same course. It starts all open throttle, and I think a few of us were probably surprised, even myself not competing, but the other pro ride guys that I was working with on the day were surprised at how on throttle they had to be when it dried up to keep that line the whole way around the bowl, all the way to the transition at the horseshoe. It was a massive throttle track. And then the second half is the tightest stuff you do ever at the bend. And it's brilliant. You get this really big yin and yang in one layout. And it was totally different to the other layouts we do for that reason.
Yeah. I did find that I loved the layout and I love driving it, particularly lead runs, flicking into the bowl and then hanging it out there is awesome. But it was a layout that required the lead driver to run the right line for it to work. Because if the lead driver was shallow, that created some real issues if you're trying to chase them, particularly if you're actually up in that pocket. So that was we don't normally run layouts that are too much like that require the lead car to be good, and that doesn't have flow-on effects too much to the chase driver. But I think that layout, that is just something to think about, because it is something that's going to affect the chase driver that much if the lead car isn't in the right position.
No, that comes back to sort of Ben's point earlier about maybe slightly harsher judging criteria, perhaps where there is that extra focus on who's actually maybe not consciously but subconsciously shutting the door on their chase driver as a lead, and marking it down a little bit more aggressively. Again, it's hard not having done the judging thing. It's not an enviable job, as you say. It's completely thankless. But anything we can do as a group and a community to try to help them to make it better for them as judges as well. Yeah.
The other thing that I think might have been quite difficult for the judges was actually seeing the important part of that layout where the lead car needed to be wide. I think would have been very hard to see from the judges' viewing spot because it's so far away. But also, I'm not sure if the angles really allow you to see if someone's deep or someone's shallow very easily. It's just something that I noticed is it going through there, the judges didn't seem to score harshly on those that were shallow compared to those that were wide. And I think that might have been a factor, as it was just really hard to see in quite a distance from where the judges were actually sitting.
Oh, definitely. So, obviously, commentary box is right next to the judges' tower. For that, and basically, you could see the bowl pretty well. It was pretty easy to gauge someone being either on the wall or a little bit away from the wall or mid-track. But that coming up where the quad kick ends and coming up over the crest there, you were pretty much blind because you could actually see the bottom of the cars. So from the height that we sit, which is 2 stories up, you could, or 1 story up, you couldn't actually physically see that part of the track. So you could see coming off the bowl, and then you could see where the car, like the wheels were on the car, pretty much as they come up to the top of that crest, right on that outside zone there. So you couldn't quite see where, like you could see if they were really close to that tyre bundle, which I felt like he was maybe a little bit late or early there. But the actual physically coming up the hill was, you're pretty much blind from that side of the track over there.
Yeah, that's something that I noticed when I rewatched, was that drivers that were shallow weren't really getting penalised for that spot there, and that's just a really critical part for the chase to be good coming up there, and the chase driver not having to handbrake and do all sorts of weird stuff to extend out around the inside clip. So that was just one of the things I noticed with that layout. Maybe next time might be worth having someone down on the wall, maybe not a judge, but someone that can stand there and go, were they on the wall, mid-track or shallow, and can relay that to the judges so they can get a bit of a better idea of where the car was on that part of the track.
And that's not unprecedented either. So the round that we did at Malabar before we judged from the stands, we did a round where we were judging from the tower, which is halfway down the front straight. So we watched the entire battles from behind, basically. And we actually had a spotter in the stands basically giving a radio call if the car dropped a tyre on the outside through that section, because you literally couldn't see it from the judges' booth, so, and from the commentary box. So it's not something that hasn't been done before, so it's not something that would be hard to implement again if needed.
I wonder whether some sort of visibility marker, particularly coming off the bowl up the hill there was that spot where a lot of people would be dragging like a front right wheel through the dirt there if they were cutting that in too much. And as you say, if the perspective's not there to see that from the tower, whether putting one of those single vertical bollards in that spot, and suddenly from the tower you've then got a perspective of where the car is relative to the bollard, which is the same sort of height as the car.
Yeah. It
might give them some sort of idea of how far or how close are they to that bollard. Problem being, people will hit it, you've then got to reset it.
Yeah, how many donkey dicks do you want to erect throughout a day?
Yeah. Look, I mean, we see that in things like FD where they've got those bollards that get flinged off every half a lap. If we could focus on telling people to be 1.5 meters or 2 meters away from it, not right on it, and go, you're going to be really penalised if you hit it, maybe we don't have to fix it that often. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it'd help. it'd help with the cleanup afterwards as well, because obviously running that real inner line section through there was digging a decent rut, and obviously we all have to go out and fix that up at the end as well. And the guys went back and did a great job the day after the event to actually fill in a lot of the track and things like that. So even if something like that bollard point there would help in that aspect, it's probably a bonus in itself.
Yeah, when I talk about thankless jobs in drifting, you can add that to judging as well. Bloody track cleanup crews like Solly and Spenny and Matty and all the guys that hang back afterwards and do an outstanding job pumping tons and tons of dirt into the ruts that everyone leaves behind. Like, it's just all to obviously help our relationship with the bend. Like, at the end of the day, like, we're hiring a track and it's expected to be returned in a similar state to what it was hired in. So it's a massive effort from those guys that get it done. But I keep going, yeah, I'll help out, and then I get covered in champagne. I'm like, I don't want to help out anymore. I smell like wine.
We'll change the topic around a little bit now. Over to pro rides, which is something that you probably know a bit more about us than Tim, seeing as you were out there all weekend taking out people for a lap of their life.
Yeah, so I mean that was the second time I've helped out with that, but the first time I've helped out for a full day from the start. The pro rides crew are really stepping up now as part of Drifting SA and what they do, and there's an element of professionalism that's really starting to become part of that whole environment. And
thank God it's in the name.
Well, it is, isn't it? But I mean, it went from being a novelty item to being something that I think there's a lot of people that really look forward to it now as something to do. We've had to juggle with the drivers. We get that there was a bit of feeling that it was taking away from some of their time on the track, and they made significant efforts in this round just gone to try to schedule it better, to work between sessions on the track rather than during. We had to do some catch up in a little bit of the day, but then we had a couple of sessions where we pushed back and we said, look, we're going to skip a session or two here and let the crew catch back up again with their schedule. And but it's a really rewarding sort of role to be involved in. I mean, for myself this year, I sort of decided that this year I'd take a break from competing and clean up a couple of my cars, and I had the Ute, which is a really nice, big, comfortable car that people seem to enjoy driving and coming for rides in because it sort of floats around. It's not quite as harsh and aggressive as some of the sort of 1,000-kilo fiberglass cars that really are bouncy and noisy and hot and burn your feet. And so I said to the guys I'd happily help out, and they've been happy to have me. But it is great. The people that come out, they've either never had any drifting experience before, or they're there to support a friend or a family member, and they don't necessarily want to get in that person's car because they don't want to put them off. They want to see them do really well, but they've got this opportunity to pay money and put on a helmet and jump in a car that they know is going to be loud and fast, and it's driven by someone with experience, and they have a ball. The reactions from some of these people are anything from just stunned silence to hooting and hollering and arms waving out windows, and we keep sort of going, just keep your arms in the cars, guys, just hand down. But they love it, and it's really growing into being a real part of the Drifting SA experience and the events.
And as a typical Drifting SA thing as well. So, like, most people, you go, pro rides, and you see, like, one or two cars, like, rolling around, and, people, yeah, we're having fun. And then, like, it's like Drifting SA pro rides. You got 7-car trains. And, like, we're not talking, like, when you started off, I was being Landy's like, yeah, we said we'd take it easy, and we, like, left, like, a car and a half between us all, and, like, it looked all nice and professional. And then, like, I think, like, 3 sessions in, you guys were, like, trying to door each other coming up the hill, and like, obviously, when that happens, you have that little element of, you get some bobbles and, a couple of spins here or there or whatever. But, like, I know, like, very little people that would have had that experience in a friend's drift car that, like, knows, like, say someone like Vitali, like Dale's #1 crewman, probably would have had Foolish Line would have been the only other time you'd be in a situation where you're in more than 3 or 4 cars in a pack. And like when you're 6, 7, 8, 9 cars deep in a train, like it is a whole nother world. So like that's an experience that a lot of people that have maybe been into drifting for a number of years may not have already experienced, and it's something that's really, really special, and it's something that you can't get anywhere else. And like that's by the end of the day, like you just go and I'm watching 6, 7 cars, nail a really good tandem. Like you're transitioning within feet of each other, kind of thing, and like getting on the doors and stuff. And it got to the point where like some of the cars at the back were basically stopping in the hairpin because they had nowhere to go because you had that accordion effect. And it's like I've never like you don't. There's no way to get in something like that, like at all. Like
No, I mean, yeah,
they don't let you do stuff like that unless you're in a situation like that with pro rides, like running that many cars together in such proximity. So,
oh, look, I mean, we've all been around drifting as the group, everyone here, for several years. I mean, I've been going out to the track and watching it for the best part of 16 years probably, and driving now for 11. And to be in sort of part of that and see that. I've been up to Queensland, I've been to their Mat Series. They don't let you run trains if you've got a passenger. So you don't get to experience it there. We've been over and we've seen the Tectolo Drift Challenge and then what later became the World Time Attacks Drift Challenge. And they run rides with the pro for competition winners. And, my old man, he's been out in those competitions before. He got to go in the car with Daigo Saito, and he's been out with some of the top Queensland guys like Levi Clark and stuff like that. And those are great, but they're always solo passes. There's 7, 8 car links between them on the track. To give people that experience of putting them in the middle of a train like that, and know that for the most part, there's always a slim risk and stuff, but for the most part, we really trust the other guys that we're driving with there, and we know that we're going to keep it as clean as we possibly can. There's always that risk that we're going to actually run into the other car, and that's the fear factor that you're putting into that passenger that excites them. It's that adrenaline, but we know that we've got confidence. The other guy's going to do that lead line that we need them to do to be able to door them, and we know that we're then doing the same lead line that the guy behind us is going to be right on our door. And it's a sensation you can't replicate. Wastegate cracking in one ear, another one cracking in the other ear, or in my case, V8 pipes going either way. It had to be said. I was the only non-JZ powered car for most of the day there, and then I think the one or two runs that Aussie did with us, I was the only non-6-cylinder inline 6 turbo car. But
bloody thong slapper, mate.
Yeah. Look, it is. It's one of those. It's been an incredible thing to be a part of, and I'm really glad I can do something like that this year. And it keeps my sort of hunger there to come back and compete again next year. But it gives me a great joy to be part of that sort of team and that environment this year and be doing that. It's really something worth checking out for people that haven't seen it. Even just as a time filler or a show thing for people to see. There's not a lot until Best of the Rest where people are doing that level of trains throughout the day, especially not at the non-super rounds where we don't have the team drift element in the afternoon.
And to keep that sort of stuff in perspective, to imagine if you went to a state race event and they said, pay $90, $100, and we'll do a mock race, and we're gonna do a mock race with a whole bunch of passengers in the car. That's pretty much what Pro Rides is doing, except with drift, which is probably more intense than a mock race anyway.
Yeah, just think like those 2-seater F1s, but like 6 of them going around at the same time within inches of each other. Like it's basically that, and that's that. I think next round I'm gonna have to get into one of these cars like towards the back with the robot penis, and and see if we can get it on the live stream with me just screaming for dear God.
Well, there was no lack of pro rides too. I'm not sure of the exact number, but I heard 70-ish, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 75 in the end this time. We were shy on our aim. I think we're aiming for at least 90, but the weather hindered that. We just didn't have as many spectators as we would have liked, and that's fine. It meant the day ran just as smooth as it needed to. We didn't have to cram. Certainly they've got to points before where we had less cars doing the pro rides where they had to really cram some of the passenger rides in the afternoon, and now we're spreading it out. We're allowing for a little bit of maintenance on the cars throughout the day, because we all know that you push those cars hard like that all day long, at least one of them's going to have an issue. But it's good. It gets more people into the events and checking out drifting at the level that we've got it in this state and enjoying it. And I couldn't think of a better idea in terms of getting more people interested in being there.
Yeah, and as a driver, I don't know how Jack felt about it, but I found that this round was so much smoother. It felt like the pro rides was taking up so much less time on track when I thought I should be or could be driving, because I'd do these 6-7 car trains, but it was essentially only one lap, because everyone's so close that they start at the same time, finish at the same time, and all there is 3 laps downtime, and then pro rides bugger off for the next half an hour, whatever it is, to change over all of their participants. So I don't know about you, Jack, but I found it was much less intrusive.
Yeah, 100%. One thing I think I noticed was you guys must have been coming out between each of our sessions, and then even then we were sitting in sort of lineup in the pit or whatever, ready to come out. And I noticed you guys would do 2 laps, and as you took off for your second lap, they'd send us all out. By the time we got up to the dummy grid or whatever, you guys come and did your 3rd lap, and then we were good to go again. There wasn't any time that we were sort of sitting at the start line waiting. You'd get the odd couple of views that would lag behind, but no, it was heaps better. I even said to the people who had passenger, same sort of thing, and it didn't hinder it at all. And I think there was 7 of yous or something at one stage, yeah. And it was it was good. And like I said, the day got behind a little bit at the start. We were half hour behind or something, but that got made up, and obviously all the pro rides got done. So no, I think time wise, it doesn't hinder anything. I think it's finally sort of, race controls obviously all over it, and you guys being so much more organised now, and even the stand that you guys have the girls set up, for it looks actually killer. It's one thing every time I see it, I'm like, that actually, it is pro. It is pro now. It's not just a couple of cars and chucking some people in. It was the novelty thing, and now it's it is so professional.
It's a big shout
definitely. The timing thing is just, I have to applaud Landon, Dean, the admin girls. So like Simon's partner Jenna and Landon's friend Georgina, they've done a great amount of work to rethink what they were doing originally and come up with this idea of scheduling it and allowing that thing. And the first time I tried it was this round just gone, and to get the feedback from drivers that were doing it that said, it was nowhere near as bad as the time before in terms of how it was cutting into their day or whatever. That's perfect. That's exactly what it needs to be. It's great to be able to say we don't have downtime at our events, and the drivers don't feel like they're getting hindered by that either.
Yeah, for sure. No, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely paying off, whatever they're doing, however they're organising it. So keep doing that.
So a little deviation now, away from drifting SA rounds. High Tech, that was looking good for this weekend, but it's been shit canned now. Then we're going to have a practice day on one of those days that High Tech was going to be on.
That was never going to happen. You're going to get 50 cars in with 1 week's notice or 1.5 weeks notice. Never going to happen.
I was keen. I wanted to drive.
Of course you're keen. You've got a car ready to go. I saw that. I'm like, fuck, my car's broken still. And you know what? 80% of Adelaide went, fuck, my car's broken still. So, but that being said, if you want to get your fix of drifting at the Bend, I did see a sneaky little mention of Oktoberfest coming back. So that was the first time I drove the Bend. That was when I had the Seppi 2 years ago now, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in October, and that's your best opportunity to go out and try out, because the layouts change and all that stuff. So if you want to go out, drive the Bend without the stress of being in the competition, that's your opportunity to do it, and go out and have a thrash and have some fun. And at least this one will be under races this time and not double ASA like it was the first time back then when I didn't have a cage and I had to go do solo laps by myself. So that was less than fun.
Because you don't get much of a chance to drive the bend that isn't a comp.
No.
I think that Locktoberfest is that one event
Pretty
that you
much
get to drive the stadium track.
At this point, so yeah. So unless you want to go and drop 10 to 15 grand and hire it for yourself for the weekend and then fill your potholes back in, that's pretty much your only chance to drive the stadium circuit. So
yeah, there's going to be another school coming up in a couple of weeks and another, I think, open skid pan session and possibly mini comp at the end.
Yes, July 17th.
17th, yep. So, if you want to have a crack, obviously not on the stadium track, but on the skid pan, which is actually a pretty decent size.
It's deceptively fun.
Itself.
It's deceptively fun.
Huge. It's huge. You can get so much speed and so much angle and stuff in that space. It's not like skid pans that people have been used to before. I mean, I've been to the skid pan at QR and it's nothing like that. We've got the skid pan at Mallard. It's nothing like that. And for the dollar value, I think it's about $90 for the open skid pan in the afternoon. You're going to have a ball. There's nothing to hit. There's loads of track time. You're going to run out of fuel and tires before you run out of day. It's definitely worth it. If you just want to have a go even at drifting and you're not sure about the afternoon, book in for it, talk to the guys, come and do the drift school in the morning. See how you're feeling. You get an hour overlap where we open up the track as well, which is always really good. So the drift school guys in the morning finish at sort of midday, but the afternoon doesn't start till 1. And so you get the school guys that have learnt some skills in the morning
and feel
get to try it on the full thing.
Go for the full track, but give it a go, yeah.
And it's a third gear entry. In my 180, you're in third gear when you enter. It's gone, you're hooking pretty good. So it's definitely, like you said, not a normal skid pan sort of arrangement. You can actually get some pretty damn good speed out there. And honestly, you run out of tires and fuel, like you said, you get as much track time as you want. It reminds me of Live for Speed. I don't know if you guys ever played Live for Speed back in the day, but they had this big skid pan that everybody online would play, and you'd just do lap after lap of random layouts, and that's pretty much what it feels like, Live for Speed in real life to me. So yep. So we also had a special thing here written, Tim's questions. Do we have questions for Tim? I've just written the heading.
Did you write Tim's questions? I don't even see a bit that says Tim's questions.
Yeah, I wrote it on mine like 5 minutes before we started.
I think we've covered pretty much most of the stuff. Obviously, like, we've gone through a little bit of your history. You have said how long you've been driving for, but like, I remember when I first saw you driving is when you had that white S14 with the rusty bonnet, I think. And
which is actually my second.
The sticker bomb. See, I was late to the scene. I didn't really get into drifting until like 2011, 2012-ish, like properly. So that was probably around then. That would have been about 10 years ago.
Yeah. So I mean, I started early 2010, and I did a few events with a little Corolla. It was a KE70, but it had a 4AG ZE motor with a little turbo off of an R32 GTR stuck on the side of it, and it sounds good in theory, but it was a pig. It was an absolute dog of a car, and it had a Jap ECU in it that was cool, but no one had software to tune it at the time in Adelaide, which meant it made no horsepower at all. Some of the NA ones made more these days than it made back then, and had no knuckles, no steering. It was a bit of a dog's dinner, that car, and but it got me out there and got me started, and then I jumped into the 14 and sort of never looked back. But it's been an interesting journey. I mean, I started out probably down a pathway a lot of people do, which is generally seen as the wrong pathway these days, which is more power, and I kept doing it early on until sort of 2013, 2014, where I was punching over 300 kilowatts out of an SR back then, which was only a handful of people doing that all the time. And it just cost money. The car didn't like it. It was laggy. It was horrible. It didn't drive that well. And when it broke, I kind of pulled out for a while and went and did the adult thing for a bit and bought a house and a few things, and then I kind of got into driving some lower powered stuff, and I don't think I've had anything since 2014 with over 300 kilowatts. I've gone through something 5 other cars since then, just things I put together, drive for a bit and part out and start again. But I think I've learned a lot more driving lower powered cars than I ever did in the first couple of years driving higher powered cars. For lack of any better way of putting it, it taught me to drive better. You had to get good because everyone around was getting way good, and if you had less power, you had to work it harder to do it. You really had to learn how to drive the car. Tate's a really good example with the CA car, pushing that as hard as he has for as long as he has. You work for what you've got, and if you force yourself to do that with less, what you pull out of that seems to be more.
And you can't cover yourself. If you've got power, you can cover mistakes. If you haven't got power, you make one little mistake, and you're straightening up, or you're running out of speed for corners. So,
I said that to one of my passengers in the pro rides at the last round about the Ute. The Ute doesn't make huge horsepower, but it makes bucket loads of torque, and that's a godsend for that sort of forgiving side of it, which is what makes it a really good car for passenger rides, because it kind of allows me to have a few mistakes and I can just sort of clutch in and get back out of them.
Margin where you can just go, I need to put my foot down, and the car's going to go, okay. Whereas, with something like a J with a big turbo, unless you're right up here in the rev range and you put your foot down, the car's going to go, nah.
Yeah.
Nah, that ain't it, Chief.
Yeah. Commanding 100% throttle, turbo says, nah, mate, having a beer.
Nah. No space, having a beer.
Yeah.
But so you've obviously had a whole bunch of cars. You've done the Jap car route, and you've now come over to the dark side, and you do have a Commodore, and as we were discussing before we started, obviously Jackson and myself are quite big proponents of Commodore drifting. I've had a couple of Jap cars, but basically I've always been in some sort of Commodore, and Jack's had quite a few himself. So how did you find that transition? Because there's a lot of people doing it now, and I don't know how we're going for. We're a bit over an hour now, but we were going to discuss some stuff about that. But with more and more people,
first 20 minutes was shit talking anyway.
Yeah, true. But
gonna get cut.
with more and more people now, obviously with the way Jap car prices are going, and the Euro scene just really not being that strong here, with BMWs and stuff like that, we are seeing more and more people latching on to Commodores and Falcons and starting to explore that territory. How did you find that transition? And being one of those people that was right on the forefront of that wave, really, because you've had it for a couple of years now.
Yeah, look, the domestic scene is getting there. It's growing in Australia, but we've been one of those few countries that hasn't embraced its domestic car market very much for drifting. We've always stayed a very purist nation when it comes to drifting. People always stayed with the Japanese cars, and particularly in South Australia, we've always been a scene that tended to lean towards Japanese cars with turbocharged Japanese engines.
Yeah.
It was frowned upon to LS swap things in SA. It's because, there's this purist notion that lives here, and it is what it is. And so to do that transition, you get a fair bit of grimacing looks from people where they go, oh, not that thing, not a V8, why are you doing that? For me, it was just a challenge. It was something different. I wanted to try something different, and I'd had a 5-litre V8 Ute that I'd taken out and done some dirt rally work, and I enjoyed it. I liked the sort of torquiness and the doughiness. I thought it was just good fun. And when the opportunity came up to get this Ute that had a roll cage in it already and a motor that seemed okay, I said, hey, let's have a go for a bit of fun. And I certainly had a steep learning curve. You jump into a V chassis, the Commodores, particularly a 3rd gen, which have really average independent rear suspension, to put it nicely.
That's an understatement.
And then you try to drive them like an S chassis, and you fail miserably. You fail absolutely miserably. It takes a whole lot of learning to understand that they drive differently. the flip side of that is if you start with one of those, an S chassis feels like someone came down from the heavens and handed you a gold platter and said, "Here you go," and it just drives itself. I think it's a beautiful place for people to start, is the domestic car scene. I think the skills that it teaches you in actually having to throw the weight of a vehicle around and tell it what to do, more than just let it float to those positions and just correct it a little bit, it's immensely good for teaching and learning and getting the feel of drifting. One of the cars that we have as a paddock basher essentially is just a bog stock plain V6 ute, and I've taken that out to X Park and we've done skid pan days with that. It is bone stock. It has a pair of lowered springs in the rear and a welded diff. Stock height front springs. The stock knuckles simply cambered in to their maximum point on standard front struts and standard height springs, and that thing's a lot of fun. It's boaty and it takes a lot of effort to keep it sliding because it doesn't have heaps of horsepower and heaps of steering lock. But the skills that you get from actually forcing something that size, that's 1,700 kilos, no power and lots of body roll, to stay sliding and make it not look terrible, those skills transfer over. The only thing you got to be careful of when you go back to something like, for me, like with the S13s, is the snap of the S13s is so aggressive. You jump back into it and you go, oh crap, where are we going? And it takes you a couple of minutes to get used to that again. But beyond that first couple of minutes, it's everything you've picked up about forcing and telling the bigger, heavier domestic car where to go. It's so much more fun to then drive something that has all of those things as a given, because you can force them to do a lot more crazy, weird shit because you've had this experience of the domestic cars.
Very good. Any questions, Jack? You're very, very quiet down there in the corner. I don't know which corner you're going to end up being in, but in the corner.
Bottom left.
One of them.
Yeah, Tim pretty much covered it. Like, Commodores are definitely different. I don't know. I haven't personally driven a lot of S chassis. I drove my mate Matt's S13 years ago now, but it was a bucket of junk. And apart from that, I've only really driven either like R33s or like JZXs.
Which are basically Commodores.
Although, like, my JZX 110 now drives way different to my VE, even though it's a very similar sized car. Heaps different to drive. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess I've driven Utes or Commodores for years now, and I've just gotten used to them being junk. But the same sort of thing. You just drive them so much. But yeah, I can't relate to S chassis because I don't know. Whereas, yeah, obviously, Tim, you've come from S chassis, like pretty much all S chassis. I think you had a 33 though as well, didn't you?
I did, but to be fair,
he definitely had a 33. I remember that 33.
The 33 though, to be fair to it, was McPherson strut converted. So
okay.
I didn't even play with the double wishbone setup. I went straight to matte conversion because I drove it once with the double wishbone and went, no, don't like it.
Oh, this is bad.
so I cheated. I cheated, and that thing had ridiculous amounts of caster, and it self-steered like I wasn't even in the car. It was silly, that car, in terms of how much I managed to put in the front of it, and it was different for me to go to an RB. I'd always been in SRs and stuff. I don't mind RBs. I'm just not a huge fan. I'm not going to go spend lots and lots of money on an RB. I'll enjoy them as a stock motor, and I'm one of those weird guys that I enjoy the sound of LSs and SRs. I'm peculiar.
Yeah.
There's not many like that, but I don't know. The Commodore thing is an interesting one. It's the best way I can put it is for the first probably year that I had that thing running, I was reacting to that car. That was it. I wasn't in control of it. I was reacting. I'm now finally getting to a point, another almost year on again, particularly now with the pro rides where I'm able to drive with guys that have so much, I can instill so much confidence in what they're going to do.
Yeah.
That I'm actually now at a point where I'm telling the ute what to do. I'm telling that Commodore where I want it to be, and it's being there.
You feel like you're in front of the car instead of chasing it now.
Yeah, and that's been a huge turnaround in the confidence I have in that car now. Reliability wise, the thing's ridiculous. I haven't put a spanner on that car in 3 outings. yeah, it's mechanically been really, really good to me, and that's touch wood somewhere that's how it stays, because call that the benefit of a domestic that's easy to do parts for and stuff compared to some of the turbo cars, but that sort of reliability, it's key in seat time if you want to just keep going all day long. And that's why I love seeing these guys in like the AU Falcons and stuff like that, because those Intech 4 litres will just go all day long. They'll run without coolant. They'll run without anything. They'll run without oil for about an hour. They're ridiculous.
Yeah, it's also a matter of finding what cars, like those things are just everywhere compared to anything these days. You can't get Jap cars. Even the Beamers are expensive. I mean, running out of manual options.
Yeah, I mean, in the Commodore's defense, they're not that cheap at the moment. Like anything, due to fucking COVID or whatever you want to call it, they're not cheap. Like, I was obviously looking for a new street car, and I was going to go buy another VE, like SS or something, but it wasn't any point because, I mean, I paid too much for a JZX 110, but for a VESS that I could have bought a year ago for 10, 15 grand, and now 30 grand. And I'm like, no, they're not worth that, But it's like anything. All cars have gone up ridiculous, but Jap cars are just insane. And anyone that picks up one now that's, I guess cheap, it's not even that cheap, and you don't want to go taking it to a track. But I guess you can't even find like a VXSS, which is that'd be a cheaper sort of manual.
That's your baseline. That's the first of the LS 6 speeds, basically.
Yeah, but even like I bought one a couple of years ago that for $2,000, 6-speed LS, and now probably 10 would be your cheapest.
If you're lucky. If you're lucky.
Yeah. So
if you're lucky. I mean, I saw a VU SSU yesterday for 18, and it's a 21-year-old car or thereabouts, and who knows what life it's had. I mean, the VZ that I've got, that thing was a 16-year-old car, but it was cheap.
Yeah.
And I put $6-7 grand into making the thing really reliable, and then made it cosmetically how I wanted. But it's the dollar value to start with. If I had to start at 15 or 16 to start with, never would have done it. Never.
Yeah. And it is a massive thing now for people coming into the sport. There is such drifting's always been seen as like one of the cheapest motorsports, and it still is. But like that barrier entry now is just gone up and up and up and up and up, and like it's not like the amount of times that I've bought a 20 Det 31 for under 5k, or like I bought my VUSS for 3.5, and like I bought that black SS off Jack for 3, I think it was, or 2.7 or something after you were done with it. And then even then, like I sold that for 3.5 or 4. But like all these, like they were cheap. And like if you want to go, I want to go out and do drifting because Brack's on this weekend, you could go out and find them. Like I've gone out and bought a manual VN for $500 just to go out and do prac. Fucking good luck. Good fucking $4 today. Good fucking luck.
$4 today for one that doesn't run properly because someone thinks the manual conversion's worth $4,000.
Yeah, bro. I know what I've got. It's a fucking $800 pedal box. My housemate just spent $500 on a pedal box for a second gen because they are just impossible to find, and everyone's just marking them up. That's without a clutch master or anything. That's just the pedal box itself. Fucked. Absolutely fucked. But this is a whole different tangent that...
Yeah, we're definitely going off topic.
We definitely don't need to get on, but domestic's still the cheapest way in. But like the barrier to entry is like it's absolutely.
I think these days, outside of domestic, so outside of 6-cylinder Falcons and Commodore based vehicles, I think the 3 Series BMWs are the next wing after that, price wise at the moment. They may not have necessarily the horsepower factory. Some of them do. If you get a 6-cylinder one, it might be enough. But they're the best starting chassis because then you jump straight to 10 grand for Z and V chassis Nissans, which
I can't find them anymore though. That's the problem. All the manual ones have disappeared.
He's the BMW guy, and if he can't find them, no one can find them.
Yeah.
What's it?
Did we end up getting an update on old mate with that cheap E30? It was it E36?
Oh yeah, no, I don't know where that one is. I never know what happened.
that troll.
But yeah, the cheapest one I've seen recently was Alan Siddle had a car that looked like mine, like coupe silver E46, but still had the original engine 2.5 manual, and that was $5,000. But I think that disappeared pretty much straight away.
I told him to put
haven't
his
seen any
7-litre in it. I said to him, pull the 7-litre running gear out of your Monaro. I said, stop wasting time with the Monaro. Just park the shell. It's a cool shell. It's unique. It's interesting. I said, but put the 7-litre into your BMW and thrash on it for a couple of years and just enjoy the seat time in something that's going to have more grip, be lighter, more nimble. And he was all for it, but then obviously changed his mind.
It's a trap. It's not as easy as it sounds.
How do you find the rear end, the E46 rear end?
Oh, it's got plenty of grip. It wants to go forward. I haven't even fiddled around with the rear end. I've got sway bar. I didn't even have a front sway bar. I thought I had a front sway bar, but apparently the lock that the E46 has, and it's connected, the sway bar link is connected to the actual strut.
Yeah,
so
like Commodore.
as it turns, it just snapped it off. So I didn't even realize that I didn't have a front sway bar.
Nice.
Pretty much most of the time that I've been driving it. So
it's funny. I mean,
yeah,
I took that out of the Commodore. Yeah, I took that out of the Commodore and went to a direct link on the lower control arm, which works all right on the Commodore.
That's what I've got as well.
But there are some that argue the other way. I think Chelsea Denofa is a really good example. He went back to a custom link off of the strut, and he uses that in his driving on the Mustangs. I saw someone ask Chelsea a comment about that the other day, and he said, no, it's pivotal to the way this thing steers, is running the drop link off the strut.
Yeah, but that thing's got so much weight jacking and stuff like that going off the LCA would probably throw the car off.
Yeah.
So and Chelsea's a Rain Man when it comes to that kind of stuff. So like whatever he does, like he knows why he has his reasons, and like he'd be able to give you a 2-page diagram of like exactly what forces go through which point. It's like American Stewie.
Yeah.
Basically, they're basically the same person. They both drive like nutcases, and then they start talking about suspension. You see the numbers and symbols start floating around their heads. Like they're basically the same person.
Have you been watching the breakdown he's been doing of the FD?
I haven't watched round 3 yet. I've been waiting to get onto that, but I've watched round 1 and 2, and it's really, really interesting.
I think an interesting video from Chelsea, like Scott Miller of all people, shared this afternoon a back-to-back on his Instagram story, the video of the footwell in Chelsea's Mustang versus Vaughan Gitton's Mustang on the same lap of the last round that they just did for their qualifiers. And the driving style difference just between those two guys with very, very similar cars is insane. Like Vaughan is so much left foot brake the whole time. Chelsea is all about feathering the clutch to have the same effect. It's both guys are stalling up the car, but Chelsea's doing it with engine load and the clutch, and Vaughan's doing it all with foot brake. And just to see that sort of technical difference in two people driving almost identical chassis is crazy at that top level. But
yeah, I've been finding those FD ones really interesting, like pointing out stuff that I didn't even think of when it comes to judging and how, this person's done that, so this is the effect of it. So yeah, it's certainly something to take a look at if anyone's got time up their sleeve. A lot of time. It's an hour and a half, round 3-1.
Very good. I'm looking forward to that. Eventually I'll find an hour and a half. Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So,
well, I guess probably one thing to talk about. I don't know if it reflects with Commodores and that, but like an Australian drift week or drift weekend, Commodores. I just want to drive mine across all the states.
See how if you look at the run sheet goes, if we have time, and we're like basically an hour and a half into. Oh, we're an hour and a half into recording. We're probably like an hour and 15 or hour and 20 in. But
I don't know. I just want to put my opinion forward and say someone should organise it.
Yeah, look, I'd love to go there, but I don't want to get trapped in another state.
Yeah, look,
I think at this
for
stage,
drift week.
At this stage, the only way you could run one would be like in South Australia, and you'd start at X Park, and then you go to Malalar, and then you'd try to see if we could somehow break into AIR, and then you come up to the Bend, and so you'd have 4 tracks in a week, and they're all like in a chronological order on the road.
And then we'll just all go down and mob Mount Gambier. Like, we'll just roll in. We'll park 2 cars at the top of the hill. Go Rose Close Pizza Boy, find another way home. And
we could probably get Port Mac.
Yeah, and
we
we're
could
all-
possibly get access to Fort Mac.
Yeah.
That actually could be doable.
There we go. So we'll keep Gambia because I like Gambia. I want to write we'll do Gambia last so I can write my car off again. And then so that's 5, 6. That's pretty good. And let's be honest, it's it's South Australia. We're still covering fucking probably
Well, that's a good-
6, 7, 800 Ks
Yeah.
or more
Oh, at least
in that.
to go X Park to Mount Gambier is probably 1,000 K.
Yeah. So. And Drift
Yeah,
League
I've
went
been
that one
thinking
real
about-
quick. They're like, oh, let's do it in sections now in different areas because, oh yeah, America's big. Forgot about that.
I've been thinking about drift long weekend or something like that instead. So do
Mm.
3 tracks over a long weekend rather than committing a whole week to it. Might be a small scale start or an essay start to that.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
did
you
I
get-
did
there's
that
3
basically,
tracks.
or I did 2 tracks in a weekend because the same weekend Locktoberfest was on. There was a bracket at Malala. So I did Friday night at Locktoberfest and then Saturday night at Malala, back to back. So that was pretty cool.
I think there was a
Did you
couple that
drive
did that.
them?
I think Kelly did that as well.
Mm. So, and I
Yeah,
wasn't
I've only-
I wasn't
Driving
planning
between
on
them.
doing it either. I drove Locktoberfest. I went, yeah, that was fun. Then Will's gone, I'm going to Malala for prac. I'm like, I'm going to Malala for prac. So I went down to Statewide and spent $800 that I didn't really need to spend, and then went, I'm going to go to Malala now. So
Yeah, I did it with Malala, Prac, and I think it was ARR for like Gazanats or whatever it used to be called.
when we
Oz-
did drift demos for
Yeah.
Osnats.
Osnats, yeah.
Osnats.
Osnat. Aussie.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was. I miss AIR. That was fun.
It was terrible.
It was terrible, but it was fun.
Yeah.
AAR is the only place I've had a legitimate crash in 11 years. So, and it wasn't even my fault. I mean, they never are they?
None of the times I've crashed, it's been my fault.
Huh.
Damn walls keep jumping out at me.
Justin Coder's jumped out at me.
He does that. I've noticed, right? I've noticed. Every time someone spins in front of me, I manage to stop the car and not hit them. Every time I spin in front of someone else, I just get fucking cleaned up every time. I don't
Well,
know what it is.
I've cleaned you up twice.
Yeah.
First
You're
time
not one
was
of those
that-
people that gets out the throttle though.
Hmm?
Are ya? You're not one of those people that gets out the throttle when they spin though.
No.
Are you?
No. I just go, and I've spun. Brody manages to not hit me, but well, ish.
It's funny, like me and Dan Hollins, we've had a habit of we can both really well avoid each other in incidents all the time. We've done it for 7 or 8 years or more, and almost without fail, if there's someone else drifting with us, one of us gets hit by the third person, almost without fail. It's happened at least 3 times to us.
Is
old
that because the third
stadiums.
person's been Gilmore, or?
Surprisingly, Gilmore hasn't actually made contact with either me or Hollins.
Oh,
We've made contact with a few people. We love Gilmore.
we love Gills.
He's made contact with a few people and broken a few desks or workbenches, but it's
Yes, yes, he has. All right. Well, anybody got anything else, or we good to wrap this up? Because
I reckon I'm pretty.
I think we glossed over one thing. You did L2s, the return of none other than D1 Davey.
oh yeah,
at round 3.
that goes back to the car versus driver thing with Davey. Me going about Davey coming back. Maybe he shouldn't be an L2, but yeah, he should have been an L2. He was pretty L2ish that weekend.
Look,
Good
yeah,
on
and for
L2
him to
Davey.
be driving, I mean,
He
essentially,
to his credit, he drove that there, did L2, and then drove it home. So
he drove home. Yeah, had a
Lucky.
little smack in the front left corner, but didn't
Good work,
have the
man.
headlight. He was so. But yeah, that was just a little tidbit to go. Yeah, well done to Davey to come back after a long hiatus. There's a lot of kids out there that may not even have realised who Davey was, but would remember the photos of the old Matt Green, primed.
Oh yeah, I dropped in the
KZ.
D1 Davey in the commentary, and then Danny come up with L2 Davey. I'm like, oh, that's heaps better. We'll go with that. So, but
Yeah,
Davey stopped drifting before I started drifting, and
Yeah.
I've been drifting for almost 10 years.
Hmm.
So My first event was 2012. So
my first tandem was with Davey, with my Corolla and his Corolla, and
of course it was.
Of course it was. Yeah. I got love the Corolla life.
Was that when he was still Turbo 4Age as well, or was that when he gone LS?
Yeah, no, that was when he was still Turbo 4Age. Yeah, so and he's actually made power. It had an actual ECU. But no, look, I mean, yeah, I can't forget that it was Davey of all people that said to me early on, you need to enter a pro comp. You know, don't do a street class at your next event. You need to enter the pro comp. You're ready to do that, and that was in like 2012. He was telling me to do that at stadiums, and that is one of those interesting things. That's where I got my starting in competing at what was our state's higher level at that point in stadium drift, and never looked sort of back from there. That it was Davey that pushed me to do that. So to see him come back this last round and enter an L2, and
he did cop a bit of shit about that. I know that as well. So.
And you were feeding it.
But anyway, yeah, a little bit. Like, let's be honest. Like, you know, it is a stock JZX 110. So, you know, we do have some.
They're not that good stock.
Yeah, they're not. It's got arms and stuff, but like, you know, it's still pretty much stock power and all that. And like,
yeah.
You know, we have to go. Oh yeah, that's right. He hasn't driven for 10 years, and like, you know, Davey was really good back in the day, but also the sport has progressed so far in that 10 years. We got to remember, like, when like Adam May and Lyndon Reynolds and stuff came back. Like, they came back into L1, but they also had, you know, basically full prep comp cars ready to go. And even they come and went, oh fuck, we got to actually like do some, like, we got to pull our finger out here and actually, you know, put some work in. So you know, props to David.
David was, you know, yeah. He was fighting the car on the day too. He put an exhaust on it the day before, and it was boost cutting because it was suddenly breathing more. And so every time it loaded up, it was boost cutting. Yeah. So, but no, props to him for coming back. I look forward to seeing more of him and more of him in the future at more of the events. I think it's good to see him back, and we're only going to see him get better and get back in the groove again, I reckon.
That's it. Just in general, it was great to see some more people from the days of old come back and inject new life into the scene from an old driver, which is, it's great to see, and come back in and just fit straight back into the mold as well. Like, it's not like come into like any animosity or anything like that. Like, he's come in and everyone's just like, yeah, Davey's back, and there's hugs all around and all that. So it's been really
COVID safe hugs. COVID safe hugs.
Yeah. There's COVID bumps and stuff, but yeah, all that stuff. Oh, I went back on the live stream and like literally watched me shake the hand of everyone that finished on the podium. He shaked all the hands as he's giving the trophy. I'm like, I don't know if that was the COVID regulations or not, but don't worry about that. So
a bit of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, that's it. I sanitize the hands between every person, I swear.
So, champagne. It's got alcohol in it. It's
something like
champagne
that.
Sanitizer.
It's sticky. Yeah. It's not very good cleaning. But thank you, Tim, for joining us this week.
It's all right. It's been a pleasure. I talk too much as it is.
Yeah, I say week like it's a weekly thing, but thank you for joining us for this episode number, whatever it is, whatever Tate's going to put in post. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think it's 11.
11?
I think so. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll just say 11, and then you can go and take that and put that over that.
You're making this far too much work.
No, just do the little thing or something. Who knows? But again, and thanks as always to Tate and Jack for being here, and for Tate for doing all the work after this, because he's the one that's gonna put it all together and package it up and put it on Spotify and YouTube and Facebook and all that stuff. But Tim,
I don't think we've said anything stupid this episode.
No,
so
I think we've been pretty good.
Normally, I just take something stupid and put it as the title. I don't think we said anything dumb.
No. Well, it depends on how much of that cold open you leave in, I guess. I think there was some dumb stuff in that. But Tim,
the internet.
You got any socials, any stuff like that you want to plug? Any sponsors you want to thank while you're here with us?
Look, I mean, yeah, these days most people can find me on at Momentum Drift on Instagram, and that's where I post most of my garbage. But yeah, that's my own little thing. I've got supporters, but I've always steered fairly clear of sponsorship. It always felt like a responsibility.
Yeah, I have a very similar feeling to that. So,
But yeah, no, it's it. But yeah, I'll keep pushing what I push on my socials there, and I like trying to give people some sort of story and background on what's going on, what I've been doing. So
very good. If you want to get bad car envy of all the cool cars that Tim builds, because we didn't even talk about like your street car and stuff like that. So go follow. It's a momentum_drift, or is it all one word?
it's underscore. Yeah.
Yeah, so momentum_drift on Instagram. I'm sure Tate will add it to the thing underneath, with the description or whatever it is.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, that's it. You can find me on Instagram at Boganzoku as well. Jack at It's Jackson Snell and JDS Motorsport and whatever other Instagram he's thought up for the week because he doesn't have Facebook, so he's got to have multiple Instagrams. And Tate, I can't remember what yours is, Tate. I feel real bad now because I just started plugging everybody else, and I'm like,
I don't know. I just started changing everything over from LMS to One Arm Bandit. So
oh yeah. So what?
probably something like that. I don't know. I
Just
just changed it last week.
Type in
Put in
Tate
One Arm
Lips.
Bandit, it'll probably come up.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, thank you everybody for sticking around this long. If you're still here, I don't know if Spotify has a review thing or whatever. Give us a thumbs up on Facebook. Leave a
Like,
comment.
share, subscribe.
Leave a comment on Facebook, calling us idiots or something. I don't know. We need a question. Ask him a question, Tate. Where can we have a question?
Oh,
You're going
God.
3 under the bus right now.
Oh, all
Alright,
throw me
what
under the
is
bus.
your ideal Drift Week route? 4 stops, less than 2,000 Ks. What's your ideal Drift Week Australia route? There you go. That's the question that I'm asking. This is how we can tell if people stay to the end if they answer this underneath in the comments on Facebook. No one's
Well-
going to answer this.
I asked people to send us shed skids and no one did, so that was very
Yeah, but
disappointing.
people are
So,
bitches.
True.
Let's be honest. You're going to get them pissed to do a shed skid. So, it's usually how it happens. Or you just got to get Gilmore on a couple of fruit beers. And then it's just a table attack more than a shed skid from what I heard.
All right. Thanks, lads. See you on the next episode.
Ta-da!
See you guys.
Bye.